kohlrabi sabzi is a little bit of a Kashmiri Hindu specialty. I mean, how cute is that? It's like a little, you know, if you were a fairy, you'd want that to be your hat. It's like a little gnome lid. So this is Bui's recipe. It's a very simple cook with really subtle masala and finishing with a little bit of milk as well, so it kind of softens down the sabzi further. What we need to do is we've got to cut the top off. These are really like little baby ones we bought at the H&L market. But as we cut the top off, we're going to keep it because these leaves and stems are really beautiful and they're part of the cooking process. Kohlrabi is a little bit of a unique vegetable in that not everyone knows what it is, and people who do know what it is aren't necessarily comfortable cooking with it. So taste-wise, yeah, it's a little bit spicy, almost like a radish, but without quite as much heat. It has crunch, but it finishes very cool. It's more subtle than a potato, it's more interesting than a cauliflower. Cauliflowers don't have hats. There's two ways you can cut them. You can either finely slice them, or because these are small, we're actually going to cut them into quarters. So they're like little wedges and they're quite nice to eat. Most of this dish actually happens at the stovetop. The first thing we're going to do is put some mustard oil in that kadai and then smoke it. So I don't always do this step, but it does help when you're dealing with delicate produce. Mustard oil has a very pungent flavour. One of the ways, firstly, to burn off some of the aroma of mustard oil if you want to have a more delicate presentation is to take it to smoking point. So I'm using a couple of tablespoons. Take it to smoking point and then cool it down before you heat it for cooking again. But heat does a lot of things in cooking, so burning off aroma in oil is one of them. So it's starting to smoke, then just turn it off. It just takes a couple of minutes to cool. So spices for this recipe are quite straightforward and very typical of Kashmiri Hindu food. It's really minimalist. We're letting the actual presence of kohlrabi speak a lot of the dish. So it's cooled a little, and I just tested it by putting the skin of the kohlrabi in there and just making sure it wasn't on a high sizzle, because we're going straight in with masala, and what happens is if it's too hot, everything's just going to burn straight away. So we've got a little bit of hing, one red chili, so we're not cutting it, otherwise it'll get too hot. We just want to keep things quite mild for this. A little bit of zira and then, or cumin seed, and then some ginger powder as well. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a twirl until it's aromatic. It's pretty already. We're just going to saute the kohlrabi. A little bit of a brief on the vegetable is that it's softer than a turnip and it doesn't need a lot of cooking, and it ends up tasting something like between a water chestnut, a turnip and a zucchini, like at the axis of those three things. I guess this is the Indian version of a stir fry in some respect. Very pretty, and it's instantly aromatic with the mustard oil as well. Now we are pressure cooking this, so this initial is just getting some colour and some taste into that kohlrabi. I'm going to turn that off, and then what I'm going to do is actually transfer the kohlrabi to the pressure cooker with the oil. Every time we use a different vessel, every time we use a different cooking method, every time we layer in spice, we're layering in flavour and texture. So this is going to get some water. You just want enough to visually to cover a little bit. Essentially, when you're using a pressure cooker, it's not enough to have oil in there to help with the cook. Because it works under steam, you actually do need liquid component in the pressure cooker in order that it can do its job properly and for the produce not to stick and burn. Now is the time where we'll add salt and then some fennel powder. That smells amazing. Fennel powder gets quite a decent showing. It's one of the main characters of the dish, so we're going to say a good 2 teaspoons of that one. And this is going to go on to cook for 1 whistle. And then we're going to finish it off with a little bit of milk. Okay. All right. So we've just come back to this. Basically, I let the pressure cooker cool down with the kohlrabi inside because we need to add a little bit of milk as the final touch. Let's have a look. It smells beautiful. It smells nutty and green and fresh and very, very fragrant. It's very aromatic. Now we just want to add a few tablespoons of milk. Just try the masala. Oh, it's really lovely. There is a little bit of bitterness from the stems and from the stalk. So we're going to add a bit of milk, and if it doesn't lift the veil of that bitterness enough, we will add just a tiny bit of sugar. So just like 2 tablespoons of milk. Oh, look at that, instantly. Wow, that's beautiful. It just transforms the dish. It gives a gloss and a sheen and a depth that wasn't there earlier. I did ask Shivani earlier when we talked about adding the milk, you know, was it that important? What did it do? And she said, you'll see. And we just did. The milk still keeps it quite light though. And what it does is it lifts the bitterness and pulls forward some of the oiliness of the mustard oil, which is actually really pleasant. So I think that's a win. Now, because this is a light vegetable, it would be beautiful with roti and Rogan Josh. That's how I would eat it. And a little bit of yellow dal. And that sort of flavour with this. It's so beautiful. It's like, almost like eating a fruit. In terms of, it's quite sweet and very, very soft, pear-like in texture, but with just enough bite to keep it from being benign, I guess. It still has a lot of textural interest. So Kashmiri style kohlrabi a la the Gunju house. It's so